Okay, so let's unpack this. We are diving deep today into what feels like the core engine of personal growth. We're pulling some really foundational concepts from session 3 of the Marketing of You program.
Right. And the mission here is to look at two ideas that, on the surface, seem like they're complete opposites.
Extreme selflessness on one hand and then
Yeah,
strong self-advocacy on the other.
exactly. We're looking at fighting for others and negotiating skills. And what we find is that you can't really have one without the other.
I see.
And it all ties back to this simple idea of character from the source material. It's just that intersection of your thoughts, your feelings, and your behavior.
And we're talking about the behaviors that line all three of those up.
That's it. That's how you get to what they call your best version.
Perfect. So let's jump right into that first big idea, the power of serving others. The material frames this using a book called Wonder Drug.
Yeah.
It argues that serving people who are less fortunate than you is, well, a kind of wonder drug for you. Why is that? It almost sounds a little cynical, you know?
Yeah. It does, but that's a critical question, and this is where the analysis gets so interesting. It's not about sacrifice. It's more of a strategic path to your own stability. To see it clearly, you have to look at this thing they call the self-serving others serving matrix.
Okay, tell us about that. It's a diagram with 4 quadrants.
It is, yeah. It just plots how well you're taking care of your own needs, your self-serving axis, against how much you're contributing to others, the others serving axis.
And the goal is the top right quadrant.
The goal is always the top right. That's the best version of yourself. You're high on self-serving, you're growing, you're healthy, and you're high on serving others. It's that balance.
And the opposite of that, bottom left, is the sloucher, low on both, just
Yeah.
stagnant.
Correct. But the really interesting parts are the extremes, because that's where most of us get stuck.
Right.
So top left, you have the egocentric or narcissistic person. High on serving themselves, very low on serving anyone else. They might be successful, sure, but often at a real cost to their relationships.
Okay, that one's pretty clear. But the other extreme feels a bit more tricky.
It's so much trickier. That's the bottom right, the doormat.
High on serving others, low on serving themselves.
Exactly. They just give and give and give until they have nothing left. And while that might sound noble, the source is very clear. It is not sustainable.
You can't pour from an empty cup.
You really can't. You burn out.
Yeah.
And then you're no good to anyone, including yourself. So that balance is everything.
Okay, and this is where it gets really interesting for me. This isn't just a psychological concept. It connects directly to our own
Brain chemistry.
brain chemistry.
Yeah.
Yeah, the source calls them the fabulous 4.
It's this powerful cocktail of beneficial neurotransmitters you unlock when you serve others,
So we're talking about dopamine.
which is your motivation and reward.
Okay, and endorphins.
The body's natural painkillers, basically. Then you have oxytocin, which is huge. That's the bonding and trust hormone. And finally, serotonin, which regulates your mood.
So serving others is a natural way to get this positive chemical feedback loop going.
It's one of the most reliable ways, and it's the complete opposite of what happens when you're stressed.
Right, it's the antidote to the toxic 2 stress hormones.
Precisely. Adrenaline and cortisol.
Yeah.
If you're only focused on yourself, if you're stuck in that egocentric quadrant, you're often just swimming in those. And that leads to anxiety, burnout, all kinds of long-term health problems.
So focusing outward is like a physiological reset.
That's a great way to put it. It literally makes you feel better.
So if that chemical reward is the carrot, what's the stick? What happens if we just don't do the work? If we don't engage in that self-reflection?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, it's really detrimental. The material lists these negative intelligence markers.
And these aren't about IQ, right?
Not at all. It's about cognitive rigidity. It's about how you think. When people stop reflecting, they develop things like closed-mindedness. They just avoid thinking about anything complex.
We see that everywhere, that
Yeah.
inability to see nuance.
Absolutely. It shows up as a lack of critical thinking and a diminished reflective ability. They get stuck in this black and white thinking.
No gray areas.
No gray areas at all. And when you combine that with short-term thinking, you get people who make decisions that feel good right now, but completely undermine their future.
Okay, so let's bring it back to action.
Yeah.
What does serving others less fortunate actually look like?
The core idea is actually really simple. It's a willingness to listen, empathize, and then act.
It doesn't have to be some huge life-altering thing.
Not at all. The source gives great practical examples. Volunteering at a food bank, sure, or just helping a neighbor. Organizing a clothing drive, visiting a nursing home, but with a real purpose to connect.
And the fifth one on that list seems like the most powerful example.
It really is the intentional act of mentorship or peer mentoring.
Yeah.
Because that one activity creates this incredible three-way benefit.
So let's break that down. Start with the mentor, the person giving the advice.
For the mentor, the benefits are huge. First, just pure personal growth. You become more self-aware, a better communicator, just by trying to explain things to someone else.
And you're forced to become a leader. You have to guide them.
That's point two. You develop real leadership skills. Decision-making, problem-solving, goal-setting. You're not just doing it for you anymore, you're inspiring someone else.
And to teach something, you have to really, really know it yourself.
Which is the third piece, the academic benefits. You reinforce your own knowledge. I mean, trying to teach this material we're talking about right now, it forces you to master it.
Plus, I imagine it looks pretty good on a college application.
Oh, absolutely. It makes for a very compelling story.
Okay, that's a huge return on investment just for the mentor.
Yeah.
What about the other side of that coin? The mentee.
For the mentee, the person being guided, it can be transformational. First, just a huge increase in confidence.
Yeah.
Having someone in your corner just helps you navigate all the challenges of being a teenager, and that confidence often leads directly to improved academic performance.
So they get better grades.
They get better grades, they get better study habits. But it's more than that. It's the social skills development.
Things you don't always learn in a classroom.
Exactly. Communication, how to resolve a conflict, how to work in a team. And finally, you get a role model, someone demonstrating positive behaviors you can actually emulate.
So the mentor and mentee both win. It's a closed loop. But does that benefit? Does it ripple out into the wider community?
It absolutely does. That's the third layer. The benefits for the community are real. First, it just strengthens bonds. It creates a stronger sense of connection.
And I guess it probably helps keep kids on the right track.
That's the second big one, a measurable reduction of at-risk behaviors. You see lower rates of bullying, substance abuse, things like that.
Wow.
And long term, you're cultivating future leaders. You're creating an entire generation of empowered youth who know how to contribute. It's systemic.
Okay, that brings us perfectly to the second half of this deep dive.
Yeah.
Because if you learn how to fight for others,
Yeah.
you also need to know how to fight for yourself.
Mm.
And that shifts us right into negotiating skills.
And the core philosophy here is, it's pretty blunt. You don't get what you deserve.
Huh.
You get what you negotiate.
It's a wake-up call.
It is. And negotiation isn't just for business deals. It's for everything. Relationships, family, your career path, every single day.
And step one is just knowing what you want.
Yeah.
The source makes that critical distinction between your needs, the absolute must-haves, and your wants, the nice-to-haves.
You have to have that clarity first. So let's break down the 7 core elements of negotiation from the source material. Number 1 is almost obvious: effective communication.
But it's not just about talking.
It's mostly about not talking. It's about active listening, truly hearing what the other side needs, and then having clarity in your own message. No ambiguity.
You can't listen if you're just planning what you're going to say next.
You can't. Which brings us to number 2, preparation and research. You gather the info, you understand the context, but the most important prep is internal, defining your objectives.
Knowing your walkaway point.
Knowing your walkaway point before you even start the conversation, if you don't know your absolute minimum, you've already lost.
Okay, and element 3 feels like it connects everything we've been talking about. Emotional intelligence.
This is the bridge. It absolutely is.
Ah.
The reason you practice empathy by serving others is so you can use it here. A great negotiator has to have empathy. They have to understand the other side's perspective.
You can't get to a win-win if you're only looking at your own win.
You can't. And that goes with managing your own emotions. Staying calm. The second you lose control, you lose your leverage.
So all that mentoring and service, it's basically cross-training for negotiation.
It's the best cross-training there is. And that flows right into skill number 4, problem solving. The goal is never to crush your opponent.
It's about finding that win-win solution.
Right. And that takes real flexibility. You have to be willing to adapt your strategy, to hear ideas you didn't think of.
Okay, number 5 is strategic thinking. Playing chess, not checkers.
It's about leveraging timing,
Aye.
knowing when to push, and just as important, when to be quiet and let things breathe. It's also about anticipating counteroffers. You have to think through every possible objection they might have and have your response ready.
Got it. And number 6.
Persuasion techniques. And this isn't about manipulation, it's about building rapport, creating trust. But more than that, it's using evidence and logic, data, examples. A rational case for why your position makes sense for both of you.
And finally, you have to actually close the deal.
Number 7, closing skills. Recognizing the right moment to finalize things, and then, and this is key, finalizing the agreement in writing to avoid any confusion later on.
So we have these 7 skills. How does someone actually, get good at them?
Well, it takes practice, deliberate practice. You start with the negotiating basics. You have to study the concepts, read the books they suggest, like getting to yes or never, split the difference.
The theory isn't enough.
Theory is nothing without real-world practice. You have to start small, low-stakes stuff. Negotiate a deadline with a friend. Discuss chores with your family. Go to a flea market. You just need the reps.
And you can use the other skills you've already been building.
Exactly. You refine your negotiation skills by looping back. You learn to listen and adapt, which comes from being present. You work to develop your emotional intelligence. You should always analyze your past negotiations, what went well, what didn't. And of course, find a mentor who can give you direct feedback.
It all comes full circle.
It does. If we connect this all back to the bigger picture, you see that serving others and negotiating for yourself aren't separate things. They're dual requirements for becoming that best version of yourself.
You can't really advocate for yourself effectively without the empathy and the composure you get from fighting for other people.
That's it. That's practical character development. We started with that self-serving, others-serving matrix, and now you have the tools to actually move yourself into that top right quadrant.
From activating your brain chemistry all the way to mastering those 7 skills.
So we'd encourage you to really think about where you are right now on that matrix. Are you burning out as a doormat? Are you maybe a little isolated over in that egocentric corner?
Or are you finding that balance?
Exactly.
And here's a final thought for you to mull over. If the best negotiations are all about finding a win-win solution, which requires empathy, and the best way to develop real empathy is by genuinely serving others, then doesn't it follow that fighting for others is actually the single best preparation for fighting for yourself? Maybe the most selfless act is also the most strategic, selfish investment you can make in your own success.